to the listeners. Welcome to the second in the series of conversations we're calling Peeking Outside the Bubble. This discussion series revolves around looking at what sort of opportunities in terms of careers there exist outside the bubble of academia. That is students, postdocs, researchers, more students and such. The reason being, early on in my PhD, I wasn't aware of the opportunities outside. Not that, at the time it would have swayed me, but it would definitely have been good to know what opportunities are available outside. This discussion series was made possible because of NCBS and the NCBS Communications Office, with support from CCMB and Somnatta, who liaises with us. And the audience, and if you'd like to participate, please, if you're on the Zoom call, put in your questions on the chat box or in the comment section of YouTube. We pay attention to feedback that we get. One important thing that we got was that it'd be useful to get specifics of opportunities available outside academia and where they can be looked at, or looked into. And the other thing was that by 40 minutes, people's attention waned. So we'll try and keep it tight. And the struggle, then somebody said there's some issue, we should also talk about the struggles in careers. The fact of the matter is I think there's no career that has no struggles in it. And at this point, I think this discussion is going to just look at what possibilities are there outside academics for the moment, right? And so with that, I would like to introduce Dhimoy Roy, Shambhavi Naik, and Sonia Muliyil. And again, these are like last time, amazing people. So we'll start with Dhimoy. Dhimoy, could you tell us what you do right now?
Hi, very happy to be here. I'm Dhimoy Roy. I am Head of Research and Innovation for L'Oreal and Vice President to the Board of Directors for L'Oreal Africa Zone.
Right, thank you. Shambhavi, what do you do?
Sure, thanks for inviting me, Dhananjay, and a huge shout out to everybody at NCBS. Formerly of NCBS, I currently divide my time running my startup CloudKrate, which is a supply chain company for life science researchers in India, and being head of research at Takshashila, which is a public policy think tank working at the intersection of life science and policy.
Thanks, Shambhavi. And Sonia, could you tell us what you do?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me here. I am the editor-in-chief of Trends in Genetics, and I'm also a consulting editor for Developmental Cell.
So we've got a nice collection of people here. So actually, now we'll go backwards and ask, when, say, 15 years ago, or whenever you started your career in research, or attempt at a career in research, what kinds of questions were you asking at the time? And what did you want to do at the time? What were your aims and goals in your career? So Sonia, could you please tell us?
Yeah, I have an interesting trajectory. I started out as an undergraduate in chemistry. I finished my undergraduate degree in chemistry honors from St. Stephen's College, Delhi, before becoming extremely interested in biology. I was attracted to genetics, and that's how I ended up doing my PhD in developmental biology and genetics from TIFR, Mumbai. But at the end of my PhD, I was kind of a bit saturated with the field, and I wanted to again switch fields. And that's when I got attracted to more cell biology and biochemistry related themes. That sort of led me to apply to Matthew Freeman's lab at the University of Oxford, which was doing some pioneering work in membrane proteases, pseudoproteases, phagy, and so on. And I applied to his lab. I got the opportunity to become a postdoc there. And the fact that I moved fields helped me secure an HFSP grant. But at the same time, I also had issues justifying why I was moving fields. So it was a sort of a double-edged sword, sort of. I still remember my EMBO fellowship interview at the University of Utrecht, where my interviewer asked me, what sort of questions do you want to ask in biochemistry? You're a geneticist. And do remember that we biochemists don't look up to geneticists, and we have our own biases. And she kind of said, you're brave that you're attempting such a big leap of faith, sort of. So I said, yeah, I am, but let's hope that this sort of adventure pays off. And thankfully, I got my EMBO fellowship, and I also got my HFSP grant, and I managed to do some good work in his lab. So yeah, the journey has been interesting academically, but on the side, I realized that there were many other interests that were kind of attracting me and that were inspiring me to take more adventurous routes outside academia. I also became an editor-in-chief of the Phenotype Journal at the University of Oxford, which is basically run by students and postdocs. And that sort of got me more inspired towards academic publishing and beyond. So I can continue more, but I think I would just leave the floor for the others to speak.
Sure. We'll get to the remaining part in a bit. Shambhavi, could you tell us how you started out and what you wanted to do at the time?
Yeah, when you said 15 years, I was like, not 15 years ago. And then I realized it is 15 years ago that I started my master's, and now I'm very scared about that. Okay, so I started my master's. I had unwavered commitment to curing cancer till about 5 years ago, when I realized that, hey, this is not going to happen. But since the age of 8 till the age of 30, it was cure cancer, win Nobel Prize. That was life. I think from my master's, I went to the UK to do a master's with a PhD. I did my first postdoc there before I came to NCBS. And all my life was about figuring out how I can help breast cancer patients live longer, live healthier. There was nothing else in my life apart from that for all of my time in academia. Yeah, it just was stopped at me.
And so that's what you wanted to address. And I'm going to ask you about how you came to your current position in a bit. Dhimoy, you are really special to us in this conversation because from what I remember, you had really, really strong feelings about fundamental research, and then you said, screw it. So I really want to hear that part of your story.
And I'm feeling very endowed with the people who have been so passionate about PhD. But almost 15 years back, and me and Dhananjay were together in the same college, I was very passionate about quantum physics and interpretive mathematical physics. Am I audible? Am I audible enough? Okay. And I think the master's I started doing, it was around chemical physics, and I started my research in quantum physics, a little bit of interpretive chemistry. And after 1 year, I told myself, screw it. I don't see the application of what I'm doing. I have been working with topology and constants, and I don't see an application of that. And that's when end of 2008, I decided I want to venture outside of academia. And I realized, I think around 2006, 2007, that my strength was I could innovate fast, not always deep, but I could innovate fast. And I realized one of the industries that could be interested with that would be fast moving consumer goods, if I could innovate fast for them. And that's how 2008 end-ish, I applied for a company which is called ITC in India. So that's about it.
Right. So, okay, so we'll go to the trajectory part. So ITC and then L'Oreal. I mean, this is, so there is, you obviously clearly have to have very strong fundamentals of the science that you're going to be innovating in, but there must have been steps between that and future steps. So could you please help us through that?
Thank you, Dhananjay. Absolutely. I think fundamentals are, as you said, very important, but it is very important in an industry to understand, because let's face it, industry generally, you will have many people in research and innovation, and you are not going to master everything. It's impossible. I started very different to what I'm doing right now. I was helping to build microscopes and doing mathematical modeling for ITC. Very slowly, I ventured into I went back to my basics of chemistry, and I started helping tobacco team to do encapsulation, what you see now in cigarettes of bursting menthols, and so on and so forth. Then to foods and for chewing gums, and then finally to, let's say, beauty products. This is where, let's say around 2011, 2012, I got a call from L'Oreal to join them in China because they were building up their labs. And they specifically wanted something which I didn't know anything about. They wanted to work on hair care. And I was thinking, who wants to work in shampoos and conditioners? Who wants to make soaps? That's useless. And I realized it is way difficult than it appears to be. It is a mixture of surface physics combined with a little bit of consumer understanding and haptics, which we almost never use to predict consumer behavior. And starting in L'Oreal, I took baby steps. What I realized is, going back, I had a knack to innovate fast. So I ventured myself into businesses which needed to be turned around very fast. And trust me, in all industries, it's there. There will be one pocket of the business which needs a turnaround. So starting 2012, and after, let's say, 5 countries and 8 or 9 positions, currently I am heading the research and innovation for Africa, if it helps.
No, this is useful. So I think one can take away from this that it's very important to have fundamentals, but also what your strengths are and where to apply them in whatever organization you're in. And then if you do that consistently, chances are you'll be picked up by organizations that are interested in your skills. Would that be fair?
Absolutely.
Shambhavi, cancer to CloudKrate and science policy. How did that transition happen?
So when I returned to India in 2013, the idea that Indian scientists have to wait for like 4 weeks, 6 weeks for products to come, for the same products that I used to get in 2 or 3 days, was pretty striking. And I was like, wow, how can we do cutting edge research if we have to wait? I didn't know what to do about it for the first 3 years. So that took a bit of figuring out. And the decision to leave academia was not going to become easy. I loved doing wet lab research. What I had realized over time was that dream of trying to cure cancer or helping cancer patients had diluted down to killing cancer cells in a petri dish and doing experiments for a research publication and not beyond that. And that kind of helped me decide that I wanted to do something else. As you know, Dhananjay, I was pretty seriously involved for the postdoctoral community at NCBS, trying to create opportunities for us to do more training, just to get together or just be a platform for our voices. And that's when I realized that, hey, this is something I really enjoy doing. Can I do more of this? That's when I got interested in public policy as well. When I left NCBS, I hadn't figured out which one I wanted to do. I still haven't figured that out, so I continue to do both. I run my startup, which helps labs gain access to supplies. And I now head research at Takshashila. That was a very interesting turn of events. I started working with Takshashila first on a project on gene editing policies for India, and slowly just got trained and involved more and more into projects there. So,
wow. I'm just thinking, going from looking at cells in a petri dish to figuring out logistics of supply and demand, building relationships to make that happen. I think that's quite brave. All of you guys. Actually, Sonia, I'm curious from your perspective. So editing is, what does it involve? Because I don't know what it involves to be even, attracted to that as a career. So, so you as an as people who send out papers for review, we just know that we write a letter to the editor forwards it. But what is the exact role of the editor in a journal?
Well, it's an interesting question because it varies between primary research journals and review journals. So for a reviews journal, the job is pretty different. So the editor commissions all the content. So all the reviews, opinion articles, front matter pieces, everything's mostly commissioned by the editor. So it kind of depends on the editor, how he or she looks at the field, how they want to shape the field, what do they foresee the field to be. So the reviews journal functions in that way. The primary research journal functions in many different capacities, one of them being accepting pre-submission inquiries as well as submissions, deciding whether to send it out for peer review, but at the same time also dealing with conflicts of interest, dealing with conflicting reviews, dealing with all kinds of biases, contacting the advisory board many a times when there are issues of various problems or interests. So each journal has its own advisory board that has academic members with whom the editor consults and discusses things. And for the reviews journal I run, Trends in Genetics, I have made an extra effort to make sure that there is enough gender representation, there is enough equitable geographical distribution of authors, reviewers, and so on, because that's a common problem that a lot of countries like India and China complain about, that the author pools as well as reviewer pools are quite, polarized, and they appear to be more from the Western countries and Western world rather than from others. And that's something that I've been working very closely with other Cell Press editors to increase people or representation on advisory boards from different countries. So we can consult, have more dialogues, have more reviewers and authors contribute to the journals. So that's just one half of the job. There's also organizing symposia and conferences around different topics of interest. We often collaborate with academics. We collaborate with other editors. We bring together special issues. And then there are science policies and other things that we discuss as part of journal articles, which are either editorials that we write, or we often commission them. And we do it as a sort of collaboration with other academic members. So these are just certain things that I can think of. And also, something else, early career researchers. Another common complaint from the community that early career researchers are often not represented, either on advisory boards as reviewers, authors, and so on. So that's another thing that I've been actively working towards, to get people to write articles that might not be directly reviews or opinions, but forums or discussion pieces that lie at the intersection of science and society, or even hardcore academia, then bringing people from industry on board. And I have actually a lot of people contributing from industry on different topics. So there's a lot of things going on, and that's what attracted me to editorial careers.
Yeah. When you made the transition, there must have been certain practicalities that you considered as well. And could you tell us what they were? So, I mean, moving from there's a rhythm to an academic job with its emotional ups and downs and routine and experiments and such. And moving from that to editing, what practical concerns did you have when you switched careers?
Yeah, to be very honest, I had no concerns as such, because I was already running a phenotype journal here in Oxford, and I found it more invigorating intellectually than doing wet lab experiments. And that's, again, very person specific, I think, just because I wasn't that interested in spending my entire life on just one question. I couldn't foresee that I could dedicate myself or even my lab pursuing that one question or that one narrow area of research. Somehow what disturbed me was thinking about the possibility that I would have to encourage and stimulate students and postdocs to work on that one problem that possibly I might have lost interest in over the years.
Right.
So that kind of made me, look for opportunities outside. And I was also actually part of the executive MBA cohort at the Side Business School for a module, which is basically on strategy and innovation. And that sort of entrepreneurship, networking skills that they talked about and other things, made me realize that there's so many other avenues outside academia which could help me fulfill some of these thoughts I had.
So it's fair to say that all three of you at some point felt that there are things that you liked more than wet lab work or just research in general, and that you'd be able to make more of an impact outside the lab. Is that fair to say? Right. And actually, Shambhavi, when you made the switch, were there any practical concerns you thought about?
Yeah, lots, because I was giving up what was essentially a nice 5-year contract to do two things, neither of which are going to be stable. So CloudKrate, the startup, I've never had any experience of running a business or looking at an account sheet and looking at where money is flowing. So then it in itself was scary. And for policy, there were no jobs. I mean, the life science policy is something that most people have never heard of. There still are very few advertised jobs. So I did not know where I would actually get a position. I was just starting to figure out stuff at Takshashila. So did not know where this would go. I was told by a lot of academic mentors that if you want to influence public policy in India, then the way to go is to stay in academia, have your own lab, have your own institute, become the institute head, and only then would you be even invited to anything that's to do with policy. So this way of leaving academia midway and studying public policy was not the way to go. So there were a lot of concerns when these things started out.
So at the time, the path was not clear.
No.
Like in this bubble, no, this side, we're going from postdoc, which way? Yeah, PhD, postdoc, and PI. That kind of path is not laid out, right?
No,
There must be slightly worrisome. Dhimoy, you wanted to say something.
No, yes, Dhananjay. By my experience, I think little bit of fear or little bit of worry, it's good. It keeps you kicking and alive. When there is a lot of guarantees around and everything is falling in place, I think this is where, by my experience at least, this is where you start to get saturated and bored. L'Oreal, for example, 8,000 researchers, 500 to 600 patents a year overall. And in my third year, I was also given the choice, and I realized that either I can be in known categories, hair coloration, shampoo, conditioner, skincare, whatever we call it, biomedical devices or whatever it is, or there was a small team which was working to create new categories. So I could be either here or there. And it was completely my choice. Most of the people around told me not to go into the other team because there was no guarantee that that team would be alive in another 2 years. Because there was no guarantee, I chose to be in the team because there was a little feeling of being uncomfortable. And I think it paid off. I think that team now is almost from a 4-people team is almost around 600 people team. And I started my last position was leading that team before taking this role. So going back to your point, I think little bit of uncomfortable feeling, little bit of anxiety, I think it's good.
Yeah, well, okay. I'm feeling a lot of discomfort right now, so I don't know, so I don't know how good that is. My hairline's definitely gone. So, but the point was, so I think you make a great point that there's some amount of gambling involved as well. And I mean, we are talking to each other because that gamble paid off. But then I guess that in that situation, if this doesn't work, something else would work. I think that would be an attitude, a healthy attitude to carry.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So with that, I'm just going to ask you, or are you happy where you are?
My hairline is not receding, so I'm very happy.
Your hair is growing in the reverse direction. In college, it was this long.
Yes.
Right.
No, I'm no, frankly, no, I'm happy. I think there is a lot of innovation scope, whichever industry, and in my industry, there is a lot of innovation scope. I love teaching and meeting young people, so I get to do that. I love to innovate fast and make an impact on easing consumers' life. I get to do that. The job is well paying, and I am able to strike balance with my family time or my sports time. So I'm very happy. Yes.
So actually, since we have time, Dhimoy, I'm going to ask you one specific question. When I talk to students I work with, some of them have not considered industry because from what they hear from their friends who might be in industry, in their position, this is post MSc, they say that it's a monotonous job. That you go in the morning, you come back, the pay is good. If you like to have fun on the weekends, it's great, you've got money for that. But it is monotonous and not intellectually challenging. What you're telling us sounds very different. So why do you think that there is a difference in these perceptions of industry jobs?
I had that also. I heard that also when I was doing my master's. I think it's the very age-old industry in India that we used to have.
Okay.
Old chemical industries or very old companies that used to have, which is 9 to 5 9 to 5 jobs, and then you are scheduled to do quality control work. I think the very definition of industry and what industry needs has changed a lot.
Right.
Meaning, if you have to innovate today to deliver a product, meaning technological innovations, so patents and publications, and then it goes to assessment, then it goes to phase trials, and then it goes to reflecting it with consumers, and then a packaging, and then a concept and claims around it. And all this process in 1.5 years, and you need to do it better than your competitor, or maybe even open a new category. You have to be extremely agile, very challenging day to day, and the time limit is very short. So I think these days industry, they are challenging the minds of new researchers very much. So
it depends on what role you get into.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
What role you get into, or what kind of industry you choose, that also. What kind of industry you choose, that also.
Okay. Actually, and Shambhavi, can I ask you this? We're wondering, so, you do a PhD and clearly apply your skills to whatever career you pursue. Do you think that there were skills you developed in PhD that are useful to you now? And what new skills did you have to develop?
Yeah, so I think policy is not that different from science. It's still trying to frame a problem statement, trying to get data, and trying to create solutions. So you're just not doing it in wet lab, you're doing it mostly on a computer, you're talking to people. So the basic, I think, principles of public policy are very similar to science. So that is something I learned in my PhD. In hindsight, I think I should have treated my PhD as a training opportunity for a lot more than just academia. During my PhD, I was very set that, hey, I'm going to have my lab and I'm going to work on cancer till I retire. I think that was wrong. I think we have to be a bit more open-minded about everything that the PhD teaches you and what you can, the range of different things you can do beyond. The new things I had to learn in terms of skills was communicating with people as an outside of the science domain. So not scientific writing, but to talk to policymakers, to talk to a non-expert audience, and understand motivations of various stakeholders. So a lot of the new public policy training came in. I had to learn a lot of economics, which I wasn't particularly fond of before I went into policy. So that's for the public policy front. In terms of business, I had to learn how to negotiate, how to get the best deals. Again, talk to people. I think talking to people is something that in a lab you very rarely have to do outside of your circle. So I have always spoken to like breast cancer people, and suddenly I was talking to suppliers and I was talking to people in Rajya Sabha, like two complete extremes. So that was something new to learn and embrace. And I have to just give a shout out to IIMB, where my startup incubated for teaching us a lot about the basics of business.
Yeah. We have a question that I think Dhimoy can address, but the question is this. Do you get appropriate compensation for the work you've done or the patents you've worked on as a junior team member, or the credit goes to senior team leaders? So Dhimoy, will get to you in a second. Sonia, I want to address the same question to you. So in your PhD, what skills did you learn in your PhD that you are applying now? Clearly, you started working with phenotype during your postdoc, and that sort of experience really helps, I guess. But were there transferable skills, and what skills did you have to learn afresh?
I think the fact that I moved fields, I got to learn a lot from different fields helped me quite a bit. And it opened up more opportunities for me to keep an eye out for, basically. And more than anything else, I think the fact that I've worked with different areas of biology sort of helped me or made me feel more comfortable making a transition to a job that oversees a number of different fields. So you really can't be an expert in one particular field and say, okay, I've gained knowledge about everything and sort of be happy with that. But at least if you have that sort of comfort level, if you have that feeling that I can manage different topics, I can understand what's going on in different fields at the same time, I think that helps. And also attending seminars, writing for different journals and initiatives, collaborating with different people helped me quite a bit. Because what the job entails is quite a bit of scientific communication, networking, as well as knowing the community. So that basically involves having good communication skills, having the ability to understand the scientific problems, the literature for that particular field in question. So I think the ability to also juggle different things at the same time, that kind of helped me, because when I moved from a postdoc to this job, I felt life was a bit, in fact, it was easier for me just because at the time of my postdoc, I was managing my wet lab experiments and phenotype on the side without really getting any monetary compensation for doing so. Whereas when I moved into hardcore publishing, the experience I gained from both my, sort of experiences with phenotype and in the lab helped me transform my own journal and move quickly to DevCell. So yeah, it was, and I'm very happy where I am.
So the ability to multitask, the ability to communicate, to absorb and assimilate information and write it out. These are very important skills that you learned through your PhD training, right? So Dhimoy, could you tell us about this question of credit, how that goes?
Yeah, I was seeing the question. Look, I think there is a lot of debate around that area, and it's an ethical debate whether people are promoted per their genuine work that they have done. I think in the vast majority of the cases across industries, promotions or payment comes per their performance. So there is a very ethical system. Going to the patents bit, I know L'Oreal, but not only, for Google, for Apple, for Unilever, for GE, I think there is a very solid intellectual property rights ethical team, which means they review who should be, and it is not basis hierarchy. For example, for L'Oreal, there is a very strict rule that you will get a name in patent only and only if you have intellectually contributed to that. Just because you are boss of the lab does not mean your name gets published. Okay. And I think payment from patents, it's very different from different companies. For example, for L'Oreal, L'Oreal does, let's say, 600 patents a year. But if your patent gets attached to a launch, which does X amount of money in the market, world over market anywhere, you get a portion of that in your salary in the year. Not a big portion, but a portion of that sales in your salary.
Right. Okay. And actually, we're going to get to the opportunities portion of this discussion and what opportunities you know of that the audience can explore. But before that, I think an important point that has been brought up, and that is of compensation a couple of times. So would you place yourself in a, comfortable, can need more, don't know what to do with this? Which of these categories do you put yourself in at the moment?
What were the categories again, Dhananjay?
Comfortable, could do with more, don't know what to do with how much money I have. So,
Okay. More money is always welcome, but I would say comfortable.
Yeah.
that's the choice.
I was thinking the same. Who's
Exactly.
going to say no to more money?
Yes.
Exactly.
But
I think,
so you're at least comfortable.
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. And okay, so now this is an important portion of the discussion where maybe you can tell us as to what PhD, new PhDs or people early on in their PhDs who might be looking into career options outside a PhD, like you, they're smart, they worked hard, found wet lab is not for them. Where can they look for opportunities outside academia? That specifically you recommend that work. So Sonia, do you want to start, please?
Yeah, my advice would be that start early and also just make sure that you don't get stuck at the vet lab research work. It's important to do activities outside the lab. It's important to network, engage in such webinars and do other activities which might interest you. But there's also a word of caution. Don't do too much. Balance it in a way that you are interested in maybe two or three, because it's impossible for any one person to accomplish everything, though there are some exceptions to the rule. I would say that it's important that you find two or three things that motivate you outside the lab, and you never know what those tangential things can lead you to. And more importantly, network. I think really important at conferences, outside conferences, whenever you get the opportunity to talk to people outside academia or people who've made the move, because they are the ones who can give you advice as to how they did it, just like all of us here. And the more stories you get to hear, the more people you talk to, it's what will help you make your decision. Yeah.
So, but are there specific resources where people can look for jobs in your field? Would you recommend anything?
Absolutely. So I was planning to post them at the end of the webinar, some of the links that I have. They talk about sorts of, the skills that you require to get into an editorial job, the sort of things that people look for in the candidates that they interview for such jobs and so on. So I will post the links in the screen right after the webinar.
Thank you very much. And to the audience, we'll share those links with you. Shambhavi, say, both the sort of positions, both the worlds that you straddle, where can people look for opportunities, to explore?
Right. I'll come to that, but then I just wanted to talk about the compensation issue a bit. Is that Indian academia sets a really low bar of what comfortable could be, and that's something that needs to change. I mean, irrespective of what other fields pay, the Indian academia low bar has to change. In terms of opportunities, I think entrepreneurial opportunities are plenty. Particularly if you're based in Bangalore, we have some excellent incubators, one on the NCBS campus. We incubated at NSR Cell, which is at IMB. There's plenty of funding available. So do consider getting into some sort of training program, because it kind of helps you augment what you want to do. CloudKrate is always hiring. We always have growth manager roles. So that's always a possibility. For public policy, it is a little bit more problematic. It is not actively advertised roles as of yet. Like I said, when I started out, I was actively told that, hey, this might not lead to anywhere. I can vouch that that is not true. Today, I'm part of a DBT drafting committee on gene-edited plants guidelines, and I'm not even from agriculture. If I stayed in academia, I would have never been on that committee. I have been to Parliament House to talk about the DNA technology bill as a witness in a report that came out earlier this month, and I've represented India at BRICS academic forum, things I would not have even imagined being in academia. So science policy is a completely uncharted territory. All I can say is that we need more people who have done PhDs in that field, right? The opportunities will come by. They've just not advertised, but there is a supply problem there. So do consider actively being involved in science policy from now on. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of jobs and opportunities out there.
Right. In addition to the previous question, we have an extension on that, I feel, saying that we are trained for very specific things in a PhD, and the vast world of industries becomes very overwhelming, and to land into a specific place can be tough. And is there a process to follow? We'll answer that in a second. Dhimoy, would you recommend resources where people can say, like in L'Oreal or adjacent industry, look for opportunities that they can explore? Are there things like paid internships that PhDs
Absolutely.
can pick up?
Absolutely, yeah. I think companies like L'Oreal and I am in the for Africa zone. I'm in the board of directors of the internship for innovation kind. There is something with the African government they have built up, but I'm almost sure there is something for fast moving consumer goods for South Asian industries also. So they do paid internships for 1.5 year. For example, in France or in Europe, there is something called as VIE, where the government pays and you go to do 1 year or 1.5 year in one of the companies. I think more and more China, Thailand, Indonesia, they're starting on that. India would also, if I'm not wrong, very strong in Africa. So those kind. But other than that also, I think most of the big companies, they have paid internships where you go and maybe after that, after 6 months, you don't get a pre-placement offer. You don't get a PPO. So you go to some other and you don't get, it could be for two things. And I think the recent question I was just seeing, it could be one of those, because when you get out of PhD with, let's say, a biophysics degree or a biophysics inclination, you have two options, whether to go to an industry which has a direct implication of biophysics, meaning industry which is directly working on biophysics, or on an industry which is, let's say, a packaging industry or a consumer industry or a FMCG, which has applications of biophysics, but not directly. So you get to be part of the product and contribute from the biophysics angle. Very important to understand which one you want to choose. Some people want to be in the core, some people don't. And doing internships time to time, it gives them this flexibility also to choose, I feel.
Right. So I think flexibility is a very important point to bring up, because that's something that, again, thanks to NCBS, we do this postdoc symposium, the next one of which is coming up, where we explore these questions. And one thing that has been said time and again, and we saw in the last discussion as well, you have to be open to apply your analytical skills to any given problem. So if you're good at, say, like Shambhavi was probably an excellent at culturing cells, that doesn't mean that's the only thing you're good for, right? So I think it's fair to look at what your talents are, what you like, and what the options are. And then you look at something that overlaps all three of them, right? And the question of options, I think you have to try it. Never, at least in my experience, it doesn't change. You apply to 15 places for BSc, 15 places for MSc, 15 places for PhD. And now, like I'm in the job market, 15 institutions for a faculty position. Not everything works, and you go with what overlaps with your interest best and what is available. I think that's a fair point to look at. And like all of you have mentioned, there are resources that one should keep testing and looking at. These things won't appear by themselves. You in an active search through, I guess, LinkedIn or just Google searches for these positions would be helpful. Does that sound correct, or am I off base somewhere? Because again, I'm in the bubble. I haven't come out of it. So please correct me if I'm wrong.
I think That's fairly what it is, Dhananjay. And I think, most of the companies, they have their HRs are on LinkedIn and they publish their paid internship positions on LinkedIn. I keep seeing a lot of it on LinkedIn. So I'm very sure most of the companies are doing it. Follow the companies on LinkedIn. I mean, follow their hashtags, and I'm sure you will get alerts and take it up from there. And like you said, it doesn't change from especially in India, to having applying 15 places after class 12 to after PhD. It's exactly the same. It's the same.
Right. So we'll share whatever opportunities that Shambhavi, Dhimoy, and Sonia, will share with us, with the audience. So before we go, are there any pearls of wisdom that you would like to share? Small pearls of wisdom. You're very wise with small pearls. Can we start with Sonia, please?
Well, I think in line with whatever we were discussing, just follow your heart. I know it's difficult because, as I mentioned before, I had offers from India to come back and, set up a lab, but I didn't, just because, I felt that's not what I wanted from life. So it's important. Maybe the easy option is not always the best option that you have. It's important to think beyond, which will keep you happy for a longer term. So that's what my advice would be.
Shambhavi?
I'm going to pass on a pearl of wisdom that I got from my mentor. It was in the middle of my postdoc, and I had a paper rejection and a grant rejection in 2 days. And I went to a cabin and I was like, this is it. I'm giving up. I'm not meant for this. Bye-bye, academia. And she refused to let me go. And she said, look, you want to leave, you can leave, but not today. Not when you don't know what you're giving up. Not when you cannot appreciate what you can contribute. So let's get the grant in, let's get the paper out. If you want to leave, then okay. And so she worked really hard with me for the next year and a half to get both of those two things done. And then she asked me, do you still want to go? And I said, yes. And then she was like, okay, now you know what you're giving up. So if you're deciding to give up on any stream, always keep that in mind, that never at your weakest point, always at your strongest point.
Right. Dhimoy, your black pearl of wisdom.
Two, I think first one, and I think Sonia mentioned it or Shambhavi mentioned it already, but just to reiterate, I really think, and from my experience also, I think things like masters or PhD, we should take it as an orientation program and not just as a course where we decide the path. That's before joining the industry. And after, let's say you join an industry, I think we shouldn't be afraid to fail. If we are not failing, we are not innovating enough. I think it's okay to fail. It's completely okay to fail and then keep moving, get up and keep moving. That's it.
Right. So since we're approaching the end, we don't see more questions at the moment. I'd like to summarize that, basically it's important to know where your talents lie, what your interest is. Your interest is one of the most important things you can follow. And so the skills that you learn in PhD are not limited to the basic bench work. It goes way beyond that. And you have to be able to communicate that to people outside the lab, whether it be for grants, whether it be for selling products, whether it be for actually communicating the science to your own colleagues. And finally, do not be afraid to fail. Gambling is there, and did I just say that? There's some amount of gambling is okay. And look out for opportunities. It's an active process. You must look out for yourself. Things just don't appear. Right. So with that, I'm going to thank Dhimoy, Shambhavi, and Sonia. Thank you again so much. Sonia, Dhimoy, it's still a work day for you. So thank you so much for being here. Shambhavi, really deeply appreciate your joining us with your multiple roles. Again, I would like to thank NCBS and the NCBS Communications Office and CCMB for liaising with us. And I would really request the audience to give us feedback. We'd like to improve. And if there's anything we can do to improve, please let us know. The form is linked to the tweet, so you can follow us at Bubble Peaking or send us an email to peakingoutsidethebubble@gmail.com. And with that, I'll bring this session of Peaking Outside the Bubble to an end. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Dhananjay.
Thanks.